Hi, everyone. So I'd like to introduce Dan Flitton. He is the author of Lead Without Losing Yourself. Dan, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dan. I've been in education for almost 3 decades. I started in '98 as a teacher and taught grades 3 to 8 from '98 to 2008. And then, under the advice of my parish priest and other people at the school, they said I should get into administration. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll get into administration. Why not? I'll give that a whirl. And what happened was the principal at the time said, yeah, most people don't get in at the first crack of the interview. And I went, oh, okay. So, I'll go to the interview, learn how it's done, maybe get some advice, some good career goals. That sounds fantastic. That sounds like a win-win to me. So I went through the process and found out that I got in and was the first round, and I was opening a new school to boot, but no building, just here you go. And did you see how excited my wife was? Neither did I. I'm assuming you said no. No, she wasn't very excited at all at that move. And that launched me into my career into administration since 2008 until currently.
So you've been a teacher and now is it the last 17 years of vice principal?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Almost. Well, yeah, I'm thinking about that. At 2008, yeah, finishing up 18 years.
The book is about stoicism. And if I say something incorrect, just correct me, all right? But you you bring up two famous people, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who
Mm.
most of us, I believe, remember from the movie Gladiator.
Right.
And Ridley Scott, I think, took some license with that. And then you also have St. Francis, and is it Assisi?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I did say it right. Okay. So can you tell us why you used Marcus Aurelius first?
Well, yeah, you asked like people have asked me that before. And again, it's just about his leadership. He wrote the Meditations, his famous book, privately. That was just his journal. And then years later, people discovered the journal and have been publishing ever since. And these were his private thoughts, not for fanfare, not for, hey, look at me, look how wonderful I am. And I thought, wow, if this was his internal thoughts, and he wasn't like the one thing that Ridley Scott did get correct was that he was on the battle lines. He was out there supporting his troops. He was leading his empire during plague, war. He was dealing with a lot of things that he didn't want to take on, but he just responded. And that's what his quotation, or not his quotation, sorry, that's what his meditations were all about, is that what is your response? Because you don't get to choose what happens to you. And one of the lines that really stands out to me from his meditations is that the obstacle is the way. So when we run across something that doesn't go our way, we usually get the ego chirping at us, or you get all excited, you want to Hulk out. But you have to step back and use the virtues about stoicism. It's you got to back up, get the view from the top, then go back in. That's one of the lines that the Stoic philosophers used was let's back up, look over the city, then go back in to zoom in and zoom out, and realize this is trying to teach you something. This is testing you on your wisdom or your justice or your temperance or courage, or it could be working all four of the virtues. So you have to look at that and say, huh, what's the best response in this moment? And it definitely isn't anger. Because if you're constantly reacting, then you're going to burn out. You're going to turn negative. And that's not a good balance professionally or privately with your family.
You bring
So,
that up in the book. You
yeah.
and I have to admit, I like that you were honest. You didn't say, "Oh, I never get angry," or tell other people you should never get angry or frustrated. That's not realistic. But I do remember you were talking, I think, a few points where you were saying there was a problem, and you sort of felt like reacting one way, but you stepped back, just like you said. Can you tell us if you remember that? Can you tell us an example of that?
Well, again, even recently, you're trying, at the end of the day, I know people have their experiences from their school in the past, and you cannot ignore that or assume everyone had a wonderful experience at school. I had a horrible experience in my school as a student. Horrible. Absolutely. Or I did not enjoy school. I could not wait to get out of school.
Right.
And so when I'm speaking to parents, I'm listening. I allow them to vent and run out of gas, but I don't take things personally, and it's hard not to sometimes. And when I feel that blood pressure rising, when I feel that I'm being insulted, I have to remind myself this is happening for you and not to you. Listen to what they're trying to say. What's the one word that is going to help you exercise one of those virtues? Like, do they need that patience? Do they need that, like, that wisdom, that experience that you've had over the years to help them understand what's going on to their child right now or the situation they're not happy with? And it's just diffusing. And I find that when I allow them to vent, and I even wait for the awkward silence that people don't like. And I like when they say, "Are you still there?" And I always say, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm just waiting for you to finish your thoughts because let's get them out. Let's help you out in the situation. Is there anything?" So then I verify, like I validate what they're saying by repeating the key things that they're upset about, then I verify it with them by doing some work because I may not have the answer right now. So I go out and play detective, trying to figure out what pieces are missing from this upset or this story, right? And then I get back to them, putting it all back together for them. And usually, if it began with a phone interview, or if not a phone interview, rather a phone call, I usually invite them in face to face. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but people are exposed to too much of like what you and I are doing right now, like the
Right.
two-dimensional piece. And when you invite them in, there's something that happens. It's magical because they read the words correctly. They see your facial expression, they see the body language. You pick up on their body language. It's kind of like a dance where you kind of figure each other out and you can show that you're being authentic. Well, just like St. Francis, because you mentioned like the two figures, St. Francis. St. Francis led a life of authenticity by showing people that you are what you say. Because I could talk all day on the phone with a parent, but when they actually see me do the work and they actually see me put everything back together again, then you build the trust. And that's hard to do because one of the things in our system is that as a vice principal, I get moved every 2 years or every 3 years. Just when you're getting to know everyone,
Really?
everything's,
All right.
yeah, they pull the rug and then you got to start over again. And that's fine, but that's where stoicism comes into play because you get another opportunity, a different level up in a video game to practice your wisdom, your courage, your justice, and your temperance. And people say, "Is that frustrating?" I said, "Well, no, it's actually enjoyable." I love when I'd go to a school for the first 6 months because people don't know who you're about. And then as you slowly get to know what you're about, that's when you become more busy.
Because they want your advice.
Well, I don't know, like I don't want to come off as like being that I'm a know-it-all or whatever, because I'm not. I'm always like trying to learn from other people, even
No,
from
but a sense of trust. So
yeah,
after
trust, the presence, the
6 months, there might
humor,
be trust, right?
and they like the way I word things
Right.
differently. Like there's a lot of times when things were spoken, even I've done that wrong, but then I have the humility to say, "Hey, I was wrong there. This is what I meant to say." I guess we got our wires crossed here, but people like that being humble. They like me being vulnerable, but not too much. I have my boundaries, right? And
Right.
that's the biggest thing you have to do. And you see, Stoicism gives you those boundaries. They give you that framework. It's not like a checklist. A lot of people spend their day doing a checklist. But where Stoicism is different, especially in the school system in a leadership position, it gives you that framework where, again, you've got, okay, here's what I need to do, here's what I need to exercise every day, and these are my boundaries, and stick to your boundaries.
So it's in, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you were saying if someone's upset, you'll go silent.
Mhm.
But that can be so beneficial because that silence, they're getting whatever it is out of their system and you're listening. Now they might take it a different way, but
And people do. People do.
otherwise you got two people yelling and screaming at each other and nothing gets resolved.
No,
Um,
like even
that's
one
very,
time. Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, one time, like a parent, I went to a school and the principal said, I'm done dealing with this one parent because, you know, not that excellent principal, fantastic, someone who everyone looks up to, but he was just done dealing with this one parent. So of course, when there was a situation, I made my first call and this parent was very upset. And again, I sat there and just listened quietly. And she said, "Are you still there?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. Well, how come you're not saying anything?" And I'm like, "Well, I said, because I'm kind of taken back here. I mean, we both want success for your child, yet our first interaction is not going so well. I said, like, can I understand you're upset, and that's okay. Please get it off your chest, because I'd rather you tell me what's on your mind so it doesn't fester and become bigger, because that's not good as a parent to have those thoughts in your mind, let them grow, get them out. And then her and I were like peas and carrots after. And even that principal said to me after, he goes, I like that line you used there. And again, this is before I was really into Stoicism. But to me, that's what made sense. It made sense to take the pause, to be calm, not to reflect that, like not to get into the argument.
and you're honest with them. That's what it sounds like.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, personal experience, I'd find if I came up, like I told you, I have personal training. I come up and say, can I offer you a suggestion? And I'd say 95% of the time people said, sure. But some said, looked at me like, are you going to try to sell me something? And
Mm,
no. And after a while, I learned, okay, well, if you are, let me know. So the
mm,
door didn't close. So I like what you did with that silence, but you're also telling them, like, just get it out of your system.
mm. And even nowadays, that awkward silence is so not tolerable because you think about with all the information people consume now on social media or other means, they always have to be surrounded by noise, by notifications, by likes or anything. And sometimes you need that 30 seconds or more where everyone just chills because maybe that's the first 30 seconds of silence they've had in weeks. And I also say to people,
That
how,
could be true.
and people say, well, how come you let that parent talk to you that way? I said, well, maybe I'm the first person they've talked to in months. So I'd rather take the disrespect because I know that once I'm done dealing with it, I'll get that phone call 99% of the time, 3 or 4 days later is without apology. Not that I need the apology. I don't look at it that way. I'm glad I could help them navigate their child through a difficult conversation in a situation in which maybe they learned.
So do you think that apology is not so much saying sorry, but you and I are on the same wavelength.
Hmm. Yeah, I think
I want to
so.
go
And
back
that they heard that they've been heard properly. Because
Yes. Yeah,
after
not as sorry to say, oh, I made a huge mistake. I'm
they're not
not
going to
saying
say
they're
thank
not
you.
saying that, but they're also saying you and I are thinking the same way. And now we can communicate better.
Yeah, and then they feel that their child's in good hands.
I want to go back to when you were talking about the difference between meeting someone face to face,
Mhm.
because that's the problem with emails is when you send an email out and then it could be you're exhausted, it could be a typo, it could be you're angry,
Hmm.
but it's gone. It's out there in the world. And phone calls, you can't read an expression. You can hear the tone of voice, but you can't read the expression. So I just thought that's really neat that you were saying, let's talk face to face. Then you can look me in the eye, you can see my facial expression. We can go back and forth, like if there's documents or anything, and go over it. How often do you resolve things face to face compared to a phone call?
Depends on the emotion. If it's very emotional, a lot of people would say like, "Oh, I don't want to meet that person face to face." I welcome it because they need to come into the space in which their child is living for 6 to 8 hours a day. They walk in, and I know for a fact when they walk in, they're like, I don't like if they show up, they may say they're going to show up at 9:30, they may show up at 9:32, 9:28. It doesn't matter, but they might see me interacting with someone and say, "Oh, well, this guy isn't how I imagined," because they imagine what their vice principal maybe was like or their principal was like.
That's a good
They think
point.
it's the same experience and they see me and you greet them. Most of the times, a lot of people I worked with in the past, I can't believe like you make coffees and you do that. I always offer them a drink, come on in. And if they don't want a drink, I don't push it. You know, it's like whatever, come on in. If you want to stand, I let them stand, but I sit and I sit.
Like a diffusion, like you
Yeah.
said before. Okay.
And I sit like so they can see my hands, they can see my whole body. And even when they come into the office, I don't sit beside behind my desk. I sit beside them, you know, and angle towards them a certain way to say, yeah, we're in this together. This isn't me versus you. We're together. Even when I deal with students in my office, I sit beside them.
So you don't sit behind your desk.
No, I'm hardly in my office, Dan. I'm always out walking around. Like the only
No,
time
but
I'm,
I mean, sitting behind the desk can definitely send a certain message,
yeah,
like I'm the
absolutely.
boss,
Yeah.
right?
Well, there's a division. And right away, you know, like that just sets a bad start to the conversation. And the shame comes in, the judgment comes in on the person you're trying to talk with. And right away, they go, well, this person's out to get me. Well, no, it's not about getting you. It's about how to show you a better way. You know, like what can we learn from this situation to make you a better person in society? What can we do to make you better? What can we do to make your mom and dad proud of you? Like what, and I always say to the kids like this, I always ask them, who do you think you need to impress? And they usually say, you. I said, no. My parents, nope. And then they try guessing, and then I eventually say to them, oh, no. The only person you need to impress is your 80-year-old self. And depending on their age,
Oh, this is interesting.
I
Okay.
say, or the 8-year-old self. Or if the kid's 8, I say, what about your 5-year-old self? Or if they're 5, I say, well, what would your self from last year think of you right now? Those are the only two people you need to please. Those are the only two people that matter in your life because everyone else can come and go. But that older version of yourself, where you're gonna look back at this moment and say, man, that was a really good moment to learn, and that was a turning point. And that younger version of yourself are looking up saying, are you being that older person that they wanted to be and aspired to be, and who, you know, are you
Where did
turning
you get
for
that?
Dan, I don't know. I
I've
just
never heard that before.
I read a lot and I belong to a group on Thursday where we talk about a whole bunch of topics. And it's so fun, that group, you know,
Well,
and
that's ownership right
yeah,
there. You have to, satisfy you, whether it's your older self or,
yeah, yeah.
wow. Okay.
And the other thing too, like we had a parent a few years ago come in all mad because some kids were sent to the office and they spent time in the office, right? And there were two friends, got a little impulsive, and the one guy ripped up the other guy's paper airplane and caused a scene.
Right.
Okay, from your point of view and from your listener's point of view, okay, that's not a big problem. Big problem to those kids in the moment. Big problem to the classroom. You know, these kids were in grade 4. Okay. So they spent time in my office and said, guys, nope, you're staying the rest of the day in the office. I can't have you disrupting class and, you know, taking the learning away from your friends and from your teacher. That's not respectful. So you're going to spend the rest of the day and we're going to figure out how to learn from this mistake and how to move forward. So then there was a guy in the older grades who had a YouTube channel about how to build paper airplanes. So I called him down from class, asked the teacher if I could borrow him for half an hour. He came down, and I know those two young fellas looked up to this guy, and they didn't know he had a YouTube channel about airplanes. So he showed them how to make proper paper airplanes. So the point of that was that they saw how this older guy they looked up to showed them a skill, and that would be wonderful. I said, wouldn't it be great one day to be like that guy? Or 4 years down the road from now, you could be helping some younger kids like this. Wasn't that great? They said, yeah. So they go back with the paper airplanes. The class at the end of the day I walk them down and I say at the bell and to dismiss them, right? To make sure there's no more problems. Then the word got out to this parent, oh, they just go to the office to make paper airplanes. They're having fun in the office. I was like, oh my gosh. Could you love even
It's
a little more
typical, right?
judgy there? Like, you know what I mean? And that was so disheartening. But again, in the moment, I didn't take offense to it. I listened to their criticisms of my discipline tactic. And they didn't have, I know that they didn't have all the information. That's their opinion, whatever. I let it go because if they're going out and like, telling people about that, all right. So I helped two best friends who had a moment, made sure everyone else could learn in the classroom, then brought an older student down to show proper leadership and show them a skill set so they both could learn and turn this bad situation to a good presentation. If that's what I'm getting criticized for, oh, okay, could be worse. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, you might not have helped the parents, but you probably helped the kids, right?
yeah, yeah, but it's those kids who go home because I guess they thought, maybe they wanted to learn how to make paper airplanes.
Well, it could be the parents just didn't couldn't grasp what was going on, or at least at that moment. Maybe
Yeah, I
later.
didn't have all the information, and that's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, I could, people can criticize me all the time, and I mean, I get criticized all the time, and I just know who I am. I know what I do. The proof is two students I taught like 28 years ago still contact me, keep me up to date on things and how much those little lessons, because the biggest lesson that all my students get back to me later on is, 5 years from now, will it matter? Probably not. So why are you letting this bring you down? Like, and that's because I would help kids get through problems that, especially when they're teenagers. And a lot of them now, they've got some pretty awesome jobs. And they always tell me, like, when I'm getting upset, I always say, man, that 5 year thing you told me about when I was in grade 7 or 6 or 8, well, that's great. Something you learned something from me. Wonderful.
I think
But,
sometimes we're so programmed to see things in one way, and I'm
mm,
speaking of the kids' parents,
mm,
that you can't wrap your head around, oh, there's something valuable here,
mhm.
right? Like they can't see initially. Who knows what happened later, but initially.
Well,
Um,
yeah. In the rest of the year, those kids didn't hijack any learning.
did you do you find that happens often with the parents that they don't get what you're doing initially and then later?
Oh yeah, there's lots of questions, but that's the thing. Like when especially when you're new to a school community, right? Like you got to earn your keep, so to speak, and you got to win that trust. And the only way to win that trust, again, is following the Stoic framework. Just show up every day calmly, consistently by exercising those virtues, right? And yeah, so eventually you get, and I always know you're going to have those rough conversations with parents, and the goal is I'm going to practice these four virtues to figure out how to win their trust. It's not about me proving to them or faking it out. I got to figure out what it is that they need for their kid. What is that they're missing? What's the information they're missing? And that takes time. It takes face-to-face conversations. It takes uh, calling the parents when things are good, not just when things are bad. Because I
Hmm,
mean, yeah,
I've
because I mean,
heard
I've
that
called
before.
parents to say, hey, and they call back, oh, what did my son or daughter do now? I said, actually, no, they're actually fantastic. Today they helped a child who was in need, tell them what happened, and they were an incredible example of what we expect for our students to be, you know, and they go, oh, and again, it's not tomfoolery, but trying to fool them or anything, you just want to kind of call them when things are good too. So when you have to call when things are bad, then they're more receptive to the phone call and to your voice.
That's okay. I'm gonna bring up another point in your book.
Yeah.
Um, you use cartoons, right? And other movies.
Mhm.
Did you do that to bring kind of everybody into your book?
Yeah, because
Or
well, a lot of people are visual learners, right? For the most part. And as you're trying to explain something, people consume information differently. Like more people are able to remember something visually than something they read 5 or 10 years or 15 years ago. So when you bring up certain elements from pulp culture, like from movies or cartoons, that will paint the picture in the person's brain of what you're trying to write on the canvas. So the canvas being the book, and then then you fill their brain with that picture, and they go, "Oh, okay, I can make the connection now visually, and something I've seen and remembered." And I find that that's the hook to how people understand it a little bit easier
So it
than,
creates clarity.
yeah, clarity as well. Yeah, because they've seen it in action. And that way they go, oh, okay, I understand that now. That's a
Okay.
good answer.
This lead without losing yourself. What brought up that title? What created that or got you to make that the title?
Well, there's been a couple of milestones in my career. I don't know if you're milestones or not, but where you get caught up politically or, you just, there's so many things that happen as a teacher or as a vice principal where it's easy to get caught up in the negative thinking or going against what you believe in or what education should be. And I see people doing that where they start off this way and they end up the other way. Not to say they're doing anything bad or nothing good, but they kind of go away from why they got into the education field in the first place.
Do you think they lose enthusiasm?
Well, enthusiasm, sure, but they also it's just we were in education to help students learn how to be critical thinkers and keeping the students as the focus. And sometimes people lose that focus. There's other things that become more important, right? The kids are important, but there are other things that drive them to the job, and the kids kind of get in the way. And I always remind people when people are grumbling, I say to them, well, if it was for the kids, we wouldn't be here, right? Like, and they go, oh, okay, and they laugh it off, and it's like kind of a reassure them, right? But because I've been there before, a couple of times where I've kind of lost sight. And then I turned out to be the person who I didn't want to be. But then being married to the woman who I'm married to would call me on it. And some of my friends would call me on it, who I taught with, and who I was being administration with. And I would say, oh, okay, thank you. Like I didn't even mention in one book I wrote, we'll get into later on, is like there was this one situation where three people that day said I looked mad, but I wasn't mad. I was at a school. We were doing an opening mass, so my whole direction was the opening ceremonies of the school. That was what I
Oh, so you're
was
just really focused on,
really focused. And I was
right.
with a bunch of teachers that were on the committee. And a teacher came in and said, because the principal wasn't there, said, "Hey, are you calling indoor recess?" Because it started like raining at the end of the day. And I was in thought, and I looked at her, and she said, "Well, you don't have to be mad about it. I'm just, And I went, "I'm not mad. Wait, what do you mean?" I went, "Oh." So as I'm walking the halls, a student came up, said, "Mr. Flint, what's going on? How come you look so mad?" I go, "I'm not sorry. Do I look mad?" "Yeah, you look very mad." I'm like, "Oh, sorry." Ugh.
It's
Okay, that's
okay.
two.
It's okay, Dan, because we have a friend in common and he came over to the house to visit. This is many years ago. And I couldn't quite see who it was. I was squinting. And he
Yeah.
said, what did I do wrong? Why do you look like you're going to kill me? So I'm wondering if you're the same, is that you're so focused on what you
Yeah.
have to do,
Yeah, and
it's
people thought I was
interpreted
bad.
as anger or, yeah.
And then the third, because I thought everything was an inconvenience that day too, right? Like, oh, it's getting in the way of me planning the ceremony, right? So then the third thing that day was when I was at home doing dishes with my wife, and I was thinking about the ceremony. And she goes, "What are you mad about?" I'm, "Oh my gosh, I read this here the third time." So I went to bed that night being grateful for everyone that pointed out my flaw that day, like genuinely. And then after that, I started writing things down. So
Okay.
then I'd be more present to people around me.
So you
But
didn't have that angry focus look, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, 'cause again, my focus, that wasn't a bad focus to have. But I guess I was missing some things that day of being
It
present.
would probably be okay if you were on your own. You know, you're working on a report or you're working
Yeah.
on it on your own, but that you were surrounded by people. I'm just saying I get it. Because I was not angry at our mutual friend.
No.
I just couldn't tell who it was. Like he
Well,
thought I was gonna do
yeah,
violence or something. So
and
I
that
don't
was
know how
in
you
grade
resolve that.
seven.
Yeah, I
So
don't know how you figure that one out.
when I was teaching grade seven one year, there was a kid and at the back of the class because I always try like different like seating strategies for the kids, right? And above him was the clock, and I'm at the front, and I'm trying to look at the little tick ticks in between the the 5 minute
Right.
blocks, and I was looking squinting to see what tick we're on because every minute counted, right? And then I get a phone call from his parents said, "My son feels you're mad at him all the time."
So
And then
it's the
I
same thing. It's a you're
yeah.
not glaring, you're squinting, but it looks
The
like
kid
you're
that I was
glaring.
glaring. And I said, well, I'll pay attention to that the next day. I said, I know I'm actually quite happy with your son and everything, but thanks for the call. I'll be more aware of it, right? And then
Yeah.
the next day, then that's when I caught myself. Oh, I'm looking at the clock. Stop looking at the clock.
So did you get a watch?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I moved away from the clock.
Another another thing I brought up about your book, I said this to you. I do you think that's when a teacher steps in front of the class, they just click into leadership role
Yeah, I
in
think it
most
just yeah,
cases?
it just transforms and uh because they know their students, they know the baseline behavior, the ebb and flow, what the students need. Um, and that's an important thing to know when to shift gears, when to have a quiet day with your students, when to maybe have a day that's really focused on something, what works best. Like people used to raise eyebrows at me because I never did in my talk grade 7 or 8, I never gave the kids tests first thing in the morning. That seemed to be what everyone liked to do. Give them a test first thing in the morning. No, no, they're teenagers. They're barely waking up.
Yeah.
To give it to them like, after lunch recess because they've had nutrition, they've had exercise, fresh air outside. Now they're primed, their brains are primed. And everyone will look at me way back then, like 20 years ago, and say, you're crazy. No, you do it first thing. But again, I said, well, that's your opinion. I'm going to do it this way, and you can do it your way. That's okay. There's no harm in it. But, just knowing what's going to be best for the students is an important part of leadership, especially in the classroom. And then when you're looking at the classroom from a vice principal or principal perspective, what is the best for the students? Keep the kids the center, and the small problems won't turn into big problems.
So back on the self-esteem point, when you're working with students, this could be students, clients, right? Patients.
Mhm.
How important do you think it is to help them if they need it? Some people don't, I don't think, but if they need a boost to their self-esteem, do you have any concepts on that? Like how to do that?
Well, yeah, when I have students who come down, especially when I'm new to a school, I listen to whatever's going on in their brain, and then I try to then understand where they're coming from. And the best thing I do is I share a story that was similar. Like given like you have to be careful what topics you talk about, because of Ontario College Teachers Professional Standards. But
Right.
then I'll say, well, I kind of did the same thing when I was your age, and it has to be true, but you can change the details a bit because as you're telling the story to them, they know if you're being authentic or not. And a lot of people write students off saying they don't know. Yeah, they do, especially the younger ones. They know when you're being honest. They know when you're being present. They
Like the
know.
little kid, you can say whatever you want, they don't understand, and then it comes out of
Yeah.
their mouth
No, they
later.
know. They know.
Yeah.
They can sniff that. And then eventually, because of all these like hormones going through them, they get a little stunned for a couple of years. So then that's more important to be present with them and listen to their story and either share a story that happened at past schools. Oh, I
Right.
had a student similar like that, and this is what we got them through. Like I went to a school one time mid-year and I heard about the student. And yeah, he wasn't the best behaved. He'd be interrupting classes. So I say to teacher, well, okay, when this happens, you gotta send him to me. Really? I said, yeah, because he's not, you need to teach and those kids need to learn. He can come see me. So when I was dealing with a student, the question I asked him after a couple of days of pulling from class so he could work in my office was, when was the last time you got invited to a birthday? And he looked at me and he started to well up a bit. And I said, well, what's wrong? Like, were you ever invited to a birthday? He goes, no. This guy was like in the junior grades. Never invited to a birthday. And I said, well, why is that? Why do you think you're not invited to birthdays? And he couldn't come up with an answer. So I gave him an answer. And I said, every single time you interrupt that class or do something in the past that wasn't right, you know what? Every single dinner table in that classroom's talking about you at night, possibly. So when they say, hey, I want to invite you to the birthday parties, the parents should probably say, no. You told me that he was doing this. We don't want that at our house. So I said, let's make this a goal. You follow my plan. You'd be a stand-up fella, and this is what I want you to do. You'll get that invitation. So 3 months later, he comes barreling down the hall because it was inclement weather. And right first, you want to react, say, no running in the hall, no running, why? But it was so quick, and he almost tackled me, and he had a birthday invitation. He was like,
Wow.
one. And then it was funny because that was about March, April, because I remember it was kind of like early spring or whatever, right? And then by May and June, he was helping on the kindergarten yard running a PALS program called Playground Activity Leader Program, teaching the kids how to play games. And the opinion from those staff members went a 180, right?
But
But it
do
just
you
took
think
time.
you taught him what to do? Or do you think you gave him permission to be, let's say, a nicer student?
Well, I think it gave him clarity. I think the birthday question really hit him hard.
Clarity. Okay.
And then all of a sudden he had a goal in mind and a very tangible goal. And he wasn't perfect. Like during those months, he was sent to me less often, but then he showed this ability to turn around and not repeat. But he had a lot of things going on where we had to list things he could not do in class. But the
Right.
kids could learn, the teacher could do her job. And then he eventually was never sent to me other than I said, well, let's touch base every morning. I want to hear your stories. What's going on with your friends now? And it's just keeping that scaffolding up for him so he wouldn't fall off the the direction, the goal of what we set up for him. But again, you had to be calm.
Okay.
Yeah, the consistency, the justice too, because everyone wanted the pound of flesh because he interrupts all the time. But that was dysregulation. Because I mean, if you showed up every day and you felt like no one liked you, what I mean, that kind of sucks when you're a kid. So how do you turn that suck and reverse it to having happiness, having fun, having a goal?
So you have to kind of figure out, okay, is this kid in physical pain? That could be from injuries or concussions or whatever, from sports or a variety of reason. Um, not getting enough food in the morning. Like there could be a whole bunch of variable reasons for that.
Yeah.
So did you find over the years you kind of started to say, okay, this this student seems like they're dealing with this. I don't know 100% until I talk to them. And you got to be careful too. But
Yeah. And it comes down to this. You have to push through the awkward silences. Where you just sit there quietly and wait for them to respond. You can't look at the clock, you can't look at your computer. You just have to. I usually either sit beside them
right.
or we go for a walk side by side. Because when you're walking side by side, they don't have to face you. And there's something about the movement and they start to talk a little bit better. They start to
It's
work through their emotions because you're staring at them face to face. It's not shameful. It's just let's figure this out.
and do you think it creates a connection that way? Like you have my full attention.
Yeah, and then some teachers say, "Well, I think the kid's only coming down because they want to hang out with you."
So
Okay. Well, I can kind of see that because they look at like from the teacher perspective,
Yeah.
teacher, I could see it as kind of a reward thing but that's not what it's about. They just have to take time with the process and then understand that it's not what you want right now, but it's going to get to what we need.
No,
So
you have a process.
I
I
have a
get it.
process, yeah, and they
You have a
can't judge
process.
me. They have to make sure that I'm that you have to trust my process, and we'll get there. It's not what you want right now, but let's keep the child in focus right now. We need to make sure we keep them the center priority, and whatever problem you have with me right now, that's somewhere else. That's a different conversation. And again, for your listeners, it's not like I'm giving kids excuses to misbehave. Nope. It's that sometimes the kids need time and they need that someone who could persevere with them to get to the heart of the matter because a lot of students don't have that adult connection anymore with their parents, aunts, or uncles. They're basically on their own because everyone's so distracted right now. They're getting misinformation. Their dopamine's depleted from getting all these likes and all the social
Right.
media stuff. And they need that one person of the interaction. And I'm glad I can provide that service to students when I can.
So you take them, I'm going to say aside from the classroom, and then you say, breathe.
Mhm.
I know I'm speaking symbolically here, but you're
Yeah.
basically, exhale because you've been holding your breath.
Mhm.
And then just let's take some time and then figure this out. Um, you're not just yakking at them saying, you got to do this, you got to do that.
No, no lecturing, no. And again, like sometimes it takes weeks. Kid comes down for half an hour, and sometimes nothing's really said other than, "Hey, have a seat." And we sit there in silence, especially when you're new, because everyone like you gotta build that trust, right? And again, working with the frameworks of Stoicism, like the kids realize like that you're there for them, and it's something punitive. And but a lot that's why when I call parents, they say they spend time in my office. Why they spend time in the office? And they get all angry. I said, well, that's what they needed today. And this is what we talked about. And this is what
That's
they
a good
did.
point. What do
This
they
is,
need?
and this is what they needed.
Not what's necessarily in the textbook, but what do the students need? Because that
Yeah.
should be what our focus is.
And I said students come down to see me all the time. They know if they need a quiet place or they need just to deregulate or whatever you want to say. They can come to my office. They know it's a safe spot. It's a zone of comfort for them. Where then, so if that benefits the 25 kids in the classroom and the teacher, then so be it.
Yeah. No, like I said, I trained a lot of teachers. Um, and one of them said, if you get a distracting student who's taking up all the teacher's time, they cannot focus on the other students.
Mhm.
And what it sounds like is you're sometimes taking these distracting students aside and you're not putting them down, you're picking them up,
Yeah. Well,
which,
yeah, as I mentioned before, like there's this one kid at school. Um, he was in grade four, and then by grade five, his behavior kept on getting worse and worse. So I worked with the teacher, and then if he was misbehaving, he'd have to come see me on bus. He'd walk me on bus duty. He'd go to my office, and we set up his day. Here are the goals for each period of the day that you need to get to, or you gotta walk with me at recess time. Long story short, I found out the kid couldn't read. Didn't even know like consonants or vowels, nothing. So then I told the teacher, okay, well, here's what we're gonna do. And I communicated this to the parents as well. And then he spent 2 hours, not in a row, but 2 hours of the day with me. And I had to go back and teach him all the basics of reading. But the gap in his learning was so big he couldn't camouflage anymore. I
but
told him
they were moving kids ahead who arguably, so they stop where you can't fail a kid.
that's right. But he was so resourceful, Dan. He was so resourceful. He fooled great teachers because he was like the Bill Gates in the classroom. He had everyone do his work for him. He was going out and going. He was
Oh,
getting.
so managerial skills.
Yeah. Oh, he had great skills like that to camouflage. But then when it came to grade five, it's a little harder now to do that because dynamics change in the classroom, cliques start to form, everything starts to change in grade five. And so I got him up to grade four reading level by the end of the year. But that was again 2 hours immersive with me every day.
Do you think he learned enough from you to learn on his own? That means he could
Yeah.
start self.
Well, he emailed me back in December telling he's graduated high school, he's doing really well, and got a scholarship to some school for soccer, university for soccer.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But if I had to be again practicing those virtues, like, because was he respectful to me right away? No, he wasn't. He was very disrespectful to anyone in the building. But I never showed that I was offended or upset by it. I just remained calm and say, well, so let's make a better choice now. But it took forever to get him to trust you. And then when he trusted me,
He
and
started picking up.
yeah, and for the rest of his time at that school, because I left the school the following year, there was no more issues with his behavior or very little. Nothing that was noteworthy. No one told me about it, but he again did a complete 180 because, his camouflage wore off and he didn't know how to not
He
stand.
probably didn't believe in himself, though. So my mother worked with adult students, and a lot of them had learning problem is a iffy way to describe something. A learning problem could be so if you have brain damage or something, that can be a learning problem, right? And
Mhm.
it's something you have to adapt with. And I hear people with dyslexia, they have to figure a way to do things. So no matter what your concern is, but learning problem could be as simply as someone telling a kid, you can't do that. And it's like a switch goes off. And until you turn that switch back on, which sounds like maybe I can't say for sure, but maybe you did with this particular student, is after a long process, you got them to say, I can instead of I can't.
Well, he felt safe to uncover, to admit,
Ooh,
right? That's what it was. He needed the safety. Again, that zone of comfort I bring up, where he could be vulnerable with me and say, yes, I need this. And I made things engaging with them, and it was good, and again, and I understand this. People say, "Well, how do you understand that?" Well, because I myself have a learning disability and ADHD, right? And my mom never put me on medication, and with my learning disability, like I never really did well at school until like I graduated from grade 12 with a C minus average and went out to work, and I was just washing dishes, working at the theme park, and doing a bunch of things like that. And then eventually just clicked one day that I just think differently. I went back to school when I was 19, back to high school when I was 19, and my first teacher there, Mrs. Tolley, she was a English literature teacher at Resurrection in Waterloo, or Kitchener there, and she said, "You just think differently to other people." I went, "Oh," and I gave her my ideas, and she goes, "Yeah, run with that." And that's all I needed. I just needed that one boost. And that's what students need. They need that one person because they go through about in elementary school about maybe eight, nine teachers, right? They just need that one moment where someone can take your time and find out what's good. But I mean, that takes a lot of like again, going back, not to beat the virtues, but that takes a lot of wisdom
yep.
to understand that. Like and also courage to kind of put that to a student and take your time to uh get that out of them and having that courage to say to them, yeah, we got a problem here. How are we gonna help you? You know?
I gonna say between my parents, mother as a teacher, father, like I said, working with Sigmund C and that, when I would work with students and you're dealing with a variety of levels, or I'm not going to try to define it right now, but you have to figure out how do they think. But I'm dealing with one person. You're dealing with a classroom. Like
Well, I'm dealing
it's,
with 600 kids
yeah, like it's totally
plus
different, but
staff.
But if you take that moment to listen and say, how do you process things? Like, are you visual? Are you verbal? I knew someone considered very, very smart, but they said they can't write a test. So they would ask to do it verbally. So I think, or do you think with students, we need to say, okay, learn how they learn, and
Yeah.
then say, okay, go with this.
Well, you got to start where the students are at. Like when I was teaching grade seven one year, we had a group of grade seven kids who just finished the grade six test, and they had the highest scores in the school's history at that time. But when we gave out basic math assessments to see where they were before we started the program, they were all failing. And
Right.
I just recently came from teaching grade five, grade six, and I went, oh, okay, so now I'm at grade seven. And we talked to the principal and said, we got to do something bold here. We got to take them back and reteach basic concepts under the cloak of those numeracy strands. So we are
Right.
teaching what they need to learn, but we needed to kind of massage in a little bit of some the grade five, six curriculum before we could get the seven. And it took us a March break to get them where they needed to be.
What, why
But
didn't they learn it in the first place?
um, I don't know. There's no one blame, but maybe it's just the way that it was communicated to them, how it was taught. Because again, I taught grade five, six, seven, the same group of kids one year, right, all in a row, and they'd always say to me, "Oh, we don't know that." I go, "Yeah, you did. I taught you last year. We went over this." It's that whole thing, like where over the summertime, there's this whole belief that kids lose learning of what they remember, right? And then the way that people teach math, they say, I'm going to teach fractions in February. For some reason, that's what most teachers do. They teach fractions in February, I don't know, because it's alliteration or
Just get it
whatever.
over with, right?
Yeah. So then by the time the kids learn fractions again, for example, it's a year later. How does that make sense?
No, it's use it or
So,
lose it, right?
so what I would do is like, the bell work, a lot of people, when the kids come into the room when I was a teacher, right, they have bell work up to give them something to do. It's busy work. And they mark you hand it back. But what I would put the bell work is the skills I've taught throughout the year. Or if I'm teaching fractions, I give a fraction information at the beginning of the year, and that way they could I give an idea of who has an understanding of the basics and who's going to need some help during the lesson. Instead of that being busy work, it's useful data for you to help with your instruction, to see where the kids are at, to get back to the question. You got to find out where they're at because not one classroom's the same. And
So sometimes it maybe just do a reintroduction, right? Like
yeah,
reintroduce it.
that's right. Because you want to give them a solid foundation. You can't glance over like you want to gloss over. You want to give them that found, and that's what we had to do with that group of kids. Is that we had to go back and rebuild the foundation, and they took off. They didn't know what we were doing, but we did it, and we're happy because when we gave out those tests later on, they scored so much higher on those standard tests that we had to give out.
I'm glad you're writing these books because that can really help the teachers that want their students to succeed. Information like that can really make a difference.
Well, that's
They,
courage, though, right? You gotta say what's the truth.
yeah, I totally agree. I don't know what's going on now, but I know they were saying a lot of students would be going to college or university and couldn't write, like you were saying. They
Yeah,
just keep getting moved ahead, but
yeah.
they didn't have the capabilities. Do you think special classes should be, they used to have them, I don't know if they have them anymore, where kids with problems could stay after school or could,
Yeah, the funding, it comes down to funding, union, a whole
so
bunch of things that are very big obstacles for us in public education right now. Yeah, I mean, they want you to do more with less, and
right.
you just do your best, right? But yeah, it's tough to know because there were some programs a few years ago that were funded where a teacher would stay after school with students that are at risk, and you could work with math skills and language skills. And for a few summers, as a teacher, I did that where it's a 3-week program, like a booster program for kids in grade 7 and 8. I had a lot of fun doing that. You know what I mean? And in those, you got those kids for the 3 weeks, and that was a good
But
program.
your classroom's a lot smaller in the summer, isn't it?
No, I had 40 kids, man.
No?
40 kids.
Oh, because I'd always
Yeah,
hear the
yeah, summer
advantage of
school.
summer was
Summer
less kids.
school, different rules. And
Wow.
then when I took on a principal role at one point to try it out, I was a principal of something called a summer learning program. And I had 5 sites throughout my school board. And that was boot. See, originally what was happening was people were studying kids who couldn't read well coming out of SK in grade 1. Then I redirected the when I took over, I said, well, what about the kids in the middle? What about them who are just below whatever criteria we're using? What about them? And what about the students that love reading? How come they can't attend? To give them that boost and reward them, like, because it was a great program, right? It ran for 3 weeks. We did a lot of interesting things, immersive with the kids, taking to St. Marie among the Huron. We had like the firemen show up, go to the fire hall. They learned really focused, concentrated learning, reading and mathematical skills and coding with using the robots for the math thing, right? And
Right.
so we redirected it, and it took off, and then COVID killed it because you
COVID
know,
hit, yeah.
and we had great momentum on that program. We were getting some good, but when I took over it, I was like, well, I want to open it up to other students too, because the teachers were getting burned out because because they said the kid has to be under a certain level of reading to attend. No, no, because they don't even want to show up anyway.
Right.
And so let's open up the criteria. If kids are in the middle, they need that boost to be from level 2 to get to level 3, so like from a C to a B. Let's do that. Let's be that thing for that kid to give them that push to do well in. Like because I looked at the data and I was like, well, we're seeing okay results, but they could be better. The results were okay, good enough, right? But let's make it better, in which we did over 3 years. But then I learned about being a principal. That was more about budgeting, and I got out of the classroom more. And for me
Right.
to visit was more like I couldn't do as much. So that's why again I stayed the principal role or vice principal role because I keep one foot in the classroom and one foot in the office, which again, people say, well, that's what helped ground me and keep clarity about what stu teachers actually need in the classroom, the problems they're facing in the classroom.
Well, or
And I can translate that.
did being a vice principal fulfill you more, do you think, than being
Yeah.
if you're a principal?
Yeah, because what I did like that taste, I look at my and I talk to my friends who are principals, and I listen to like what their days are like compared to what my days are like. My days are way better than theirs. 'Cause well, honestly, and the odds are if you become a principal, you're not going to have a vice principal on my board. So then all of a sudden, my heart is going towards the kids that need that extra hour or two. Yet if I became a principal, I could not be of service that way.
Yeah, I got,
I
I think
couldn't do
we
it.
discussed this earlier, but I think you got to follow your heart, so to speak. And
Yeah. Because the other one wasn't, I loved what I was doing with the program, but, and I was visiting the sites every day. There were 5 sites and they weren't closed. One was in Aurelia, Bradford, all over the place. Like, I was driving about 200 kilometers a day to get to the sites. And, but I just found that I got bogged down with just the budget stuff and the other stuff you learn when you get into the principal role. And you're like, well, my heart's not into that. I'd rather be helping the kids build a tower, at
no,
work.
and when you say that to me, I'm glad you just stuck with the vice principal.
Yeah.
And
I need
so
balance at home. I need balance in my professional life.
back to this, because I'm actually going to keep you a bit longer. But what would you say you want teachers? We'll just talk about teachers. What do you want teachers to get out of this, out of lead without losing yourself?
Well, there's that's a good question, Dan. There's a lot going on in that book for teachers to learn, and it's kind
Mhm.
of funny. Like I know we're talking about that book,
Because I don't even think we touched on a
yeah,
number of things, but
but I do have this one as a first draft. I think this is the Bible for new teachers.
okay.
But let's stick to lead without losing yourself. So again, it's just about this book allows you to journal. My wife said to me when I was writing this, you mentioned journaling often. And I said, yeah, that's
Do
important
you
because
mind?
yeah, go ahead, yeah. And so she said, "Well, why wouldn't you have a section of the book where people could actually journal?" So I thought on that for a few days. And I thought, well, yeah, what if I came up with 20 good prompts I've used in my
Can you
career?
see it? Or is it totally
It's a little bit too bright. Here, I'll see if my copy is good. But what happened is like I took the journaling prompt for my
that's
wife.
better? Yours is better. Okay.
So I took the journaling prompt for my wife, and what I did is I came up with 20 prompts for each day of the school month. So I left enough space so readers could fill in the answers to the prompt and go back throughout the year and see where they were at that time of the year in their thought and how to grow being a instrument of peace. Are they following the four virtues, like combining the Franciscan theology with the Stoic philosophies, and continuing to be a student of that? And my hope is that in these pages in which they write, using the book that way, that may inspire them to write something that will help others and inspire them to, because their words, oh, I wrote that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you come back to him and
No, but
say,
I like
you
that
wrote.
when I saw that at the end of the book.
Yeah.
I was like, ah,
And
you don't
and
have to
people,
buy another book to write it in. It's right there and they could
yeah, that's
use
what
it.
my wife said. Yeah. Because she's never seen that anything like that before. And that's some of the feedback I got when people said, yeah, they're thinking the same thing you're thinking. Yeah, yeah, buy a journal, but no, but putting it here in the book. So the
They can
book
do it
now
right away.
becomes the way. As Marcus wrote, the obstacle becomes the way. The book now becomes your way, becomes your story now. And hopefully, one or two of the readers who do read it will then produce something else down the road.
Yes. So I I can't remember. Did you put a like a email or website
I put
if someone wants to contact you in here?
yeah, it's in the page Roman numeral 2 right there.
Yes, you can see it.
Yeah, the
I think
Gmail.
it's better if you do it because for some reason when I do it, it's
Well, it's
very
just
shiny.
Dan Flitton 5 at gmail.com. But yeah, so I had but that's one thing about this book that I want teachers to realize, like create that zone of comfort that if you that when students are pushing your buttons, because uh no, don't let them. Don't let them win. Every single time there's an upset, it allows you to practice one of those virtues. It's helping you become a better person. So that kid, I know it kind of sounds like, whatever. But people say, well, this guy's crazy. But no, when that kid is being that way, they're teaching you something. And that's what I always believed was that, okay, I'm not going to be upset. I'm going to, okay, what's going on here? I'll stop if something's going wrong. But then what's that kid trying to teach me? What did I miss? How did I miss that?
You got a good point because you don't until you talk to them or listen to them, or maybe I should say, and listen to them, you're not going to know what's really causing, we'll say, the problem.
Yeah, like was I inconsistent with the rule? Did I give them a crap sandwich and not that kid a crap sandwich without knowing? And maybe
Yes,
that's what triggered them. And you're like, oh, okay, because the whole idea too of the book is about that consistency piece. You have to be consistent with how you treat students, with the rules, and you can't have favorites. You cannot absolutely never have favorites. I mean, there's some kids you're always going to remember more than others. The ones I remember more than others helped me develop those virtues. The ones that weren't the best, those are the ones I remember. Like, the kids that were all complacent and wonderful to teach, great. They kind of get in the white noise. And when I see them, I always remember them by their eyes, even though they're in their 30s and 40s now. I know them, and they're always surprised by how I can see them and how I remember them, even though they've
right.
but I remember by looking in their eyes, I know who they are because the eyes don't change, everything else does.
So do you, we're gonna, I want to talk about your other
Yeah.
books in a second, but do you feel great gratification when a student emails you or you see them, let's say 30 years later, and they come up and they say, "Hi, Mr. Flinton."
Mm.
Like, do you
Yeah,
feel like, hey, I did something worthwhile?
absolutely. Yeah, because
I
you
don't mean patting yourself on the back. I
but
mean,
all those
like,
people that but all those people who
thank
doubt
goodness I did this worked,
yeah, and
right?
people who doubted me who would make comments because people would make comments when I was doing something that wasn't traditional how we should be doing things, right? But I would help kids out in ways, and I'm glad that I went against the grain to help them because they're in a better place now. Like even like a few years ago, we went to go see my son at a restaurant he was working at. It was like a restaurant downtown Barrie, and I was with my nephew. He's a big chopper. He's not from my side of the family. He's 6'5" and huge. And,
Right.
and two of my students from my grade 7 classroom, a guy and a girl who are now dating. And the reason why they're dating because they met at a party a few years before I saw them, and they connected over the experience they had in my classroom.
Oh, so you got a dating.
So I spent a good 45 minutes chatting with them, getting caught up. They're taking pictures with me and them. And when they
Right.
left, my nephew says, if I saw my grade 7 teacher, I'd walk and go the other way. He says, I can't believe how much, the the exchange you had with your students. He said, I've never had that with my teachers. And he said like it was very authentic, it was very real, and they were so excited to see you. And I said, no, and I was equally excited to see them too.
Yeah, I
Because
don't think you told them what they want to hear. You told them what they need to hear. And
yeah,
that doesn't always click into someone till later. They
yeah,
don't realize how important that is.
like we're
Okay.
having a good time laughing and having a good time, and I think he was kind of envious of that. My nephew.
You have some more books.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about both of them real briefly, or do you
Oh,
want to just talk about the
sure.
one?
Well, Steady in the Storm, okay, so Stoic philosophy for leaders.
And just so the listeners know, I have not read this yet. I'm looking
Well,
forward to it.
yeah, this is the proof from Amazon.
Ah, that's why I
So
haven't read it.
I don't have it for sale yet. It's just,
Okay.
I've been working on this one before this book. And how this book came, this one is an in-depth of my experiences in about Stoic philosophy. And I was working on this one for years. And I remember I was at school one day and the principal and the two search were having a bum day and I tell a story about one of these stories in here. And they kept on laughing 3 days later. And the punchline of the story makes them laugh every day and it still goes on. And I was driving home saying, okay, I wrote this book, but I didn't put any stories in it that are personal. I
Right.
forgot about that because I was working on it so much. I guess I had research excursion or whatever. And I said, duh. So I started going, oh my gosh, I got to put the stories in. And then as I gave my draft of one of my chapters to my sister-in-law, she said, you're a Catholic vice principal. How come there's no mention of Catholicity or Christianity in the book? And I explained to her, well, one's theology, one's philosophy, but and that's where this book came about. Because on the way home, I was listening to a podcast about St. Francis of Assisi, and I just had a bing. I can marry the two ideas together. I wrote this up, borrowing from this, and this became reality. And my wife said, well, why don't you set up the little book first, see how it goes? Start off small. Okay. I gave you more breathing room to put all the stories into.
It's the this book for the first book, I think is perfect. It's not long, it's to the point, right? And then
Yeah.
you have that great journal at the end.
Yeah.
So
And this one goes over more stories about, and it talks about like looking at the lens of the Stoic virtues and how they're being used in my interactions with people and why they're important to exercise. And it's broken up into different clusters. So the first cluster is about protecting uh, your inner fortitude. Cluster B is perception, speech, and listening, which we talked about, how important that is, especially in
Right.
education. Presence, culture and motion, difficult conversations and repair. And then there's identity, appearance, and professionalism. And the last cluster is about endurance, tough days, and moral weight.
Sorry
So,
about the phone call. It'll
no worries.
disappear in a second.
And this one here, again, this one I've been working on for about 18 years. I've been collecting data from
Wow.
uh, teachers coming out of teachers college and just observing and listening. And so this came about. But what I did, I didn't use a Stoic philosophy on this one. I changed gears and did Machiavelli.
Oh,
Yeah, so and I explain in the introduction about Machiavelli how some people look at that as manipulation and a negative connotation to it. But I explain how no, the way that I looked through the lens of Machiavelli's teachings was different about the harsh reality, because after helping all the princes and kings, he was put in a prison, had his fingers broken every day, yet still wrote The Prince and about the realities of the world. And what I say in this one is that I give the front office lesson at the end, and I give
right.
the Machiavelli lesson at the end to each of the chapters. But I think this one will really help, especially new teachers have a quicker learning curve.
Okay. So this one's first, even though it wasn't written first.
Right. And yes, and then these ones are these aren't really connected.
Okay. And
This one's a book
they're a
philosophy
bit
for
more
leadership.
detailed. There'd be like,
Yeah, there's more detail, there's more stories that I experienced. There's more in-depth look at the Stoic virtues and how they connect in the real world.
okay,
And again, this
excellent.
one is just about hey, this is the stuff that Teachers College can't teach you or kind of teaches you, but they can't because these are things you have to learn in the field on your own with no safety net.
It's just a helper, but you still got to do the work. That's what
That's
you
right.
mean?
Well, because like people when they go to Teachers College get bored because about making the lesson plans, but that's the foundation, right? And then
Right.
once you're good at making and people don't realize it takes a while, it's a mastery to make a lesson plan, right? And then, but what happens is the other crap that you can't experience until you're in it. And then you go, what happened here?
No, I think that the thing is, I wouldn't call these theory, but they're guidelines. But you still gotta, each situation is going to be different or unique. So you are building a YouTube channel?
Yeah, my son and I started that yesterday actually because of this. I thought, well, what if I need to learn? And that's one thing I talk about in the lessons from the front office is that part of my success in the classroom and outside the classroom was I always remained a student. Every year I learned something,
Good.
right? Because that way you can understand when someone doesn't
I'm
get it.
saying good because we talked about if you're not learning, it's time to step away, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, back in the fall, I was learning how to self-publish on Amazon.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
doing all that, and,
We can share stories about that
you
another
know,
time, but yeah.
but again, like you have to start learning something new. So with the hallway Stoic, I was learning. We did a quick some quick footage yesterday and learned how to play with music and how to make thumbnails and. But again, I'm just toying with that right now. Hopefully, I can get that off like put that up to YouTube in July. Because
Okay.
what I want to do is take the elements from this book and make episodes based on the chapters here.
That would be great.
And then again, I want to do all the filming in succession. That way when I release on YouTube, it's just one mini course that people can follow. So they're not waiting another week for me to do the editing. Another, you know what I mean? Like it's
So
ready made to go.
we're gonna come to a conclusion on this for now. I might leave a little to be continued. Because I want to know more about the other books in the YouTube channel. Any last words?
Well, no, I hope you enjoyed our conversation today, and Dan and I. And again, if you, this is always available on Amazon. And if you read it and like it, give a review. That helps out with the algorithm. And again, it's not for me, okay? And Dan is knowing it long enough. This isn't about me. I want this book in people's hands to read. And even if, like, I'm going to do a YouTube channel based on these teachings and even this one and that one, like all of my books, because I want the information to get out there to help people. It's not about making the money, it's about getting the information out there. So, first of all, you feel comfortable in dealing with things, and then that makes the students feel comfortable. And especially right now in education, people need to go back to these teachings, these philosophies. I think it's needed. I know it's needed. It's what I
I
practice.
keep hearing that. I totally agree.
I think that's what needed, especially in our current society, because we're going the wrong direction in education. I think we need a reset. And if enough people can understand the value of these virtues and then model those, because St. Francis said, preach the gospel and use words when necessary. That was one of my favorite quotes from him. So I don't think it was his quote directly, but someone else made that quote up about him. But it's just preach the Stoic philosophy and read the book when necessary.
Okay, on that note, thanks, Dan. And I'm gonna post your contact information as well
Okay, thanks.
once